We're exploring today something that I don't think a lot of people know much about, and that is Chinese nutrition therapy for horses. Do you want your horse to be strong, healthy, vibrant, and resilient? Do you want to proactively prevent illness and injury and have your horse recover with ease when challenges do arise? Welcome to Hale and Hardy Horses, your trusted hub for equine wellness and holistic care. Hi, I'm Dr. Rebecca, and I'm your host. So basically, this is nutrition according to the principles of traditional Chinese medicine. Now, when you think of Chinese medicine or East Asian medicine, also it is sometimes called, you probably picture something like acupuncture and herbs, but not maybe necessarily hay nets or feed buckets. But in Chinese medicine, diet is one of the most powerful forms of treatment for healing, and the same principles that guide human health care can be beautifully adapted for our equines as well. When you look at nutritional therapy according to Chinese medicine, we're looking at addressing the following things. We're looking at the general regeneration and balancing of energy, blood, body fluids, and also the spirit of the horse. This is because digestion is seen as the foundation of health, and you want to use food to support health and prevent disease on a daily basis. So the second thing is we want to look at the individual horse and supplement according to its constitution. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. The third thing is we want to modulate the mental and emotional aspects of your horse. The fourth thing is with Chinese dietary therapy or Chinese nutrition therapy, we want to preserve the horse's prenatal qi. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. The fifth thing is we want to actually supplement and balance the organ networks. So everything in Chinese medicine is interrelated. And when we get into the organs, they have different functions that are actually broader than what we see in Western medicine, but also the relationship between how the organs communicate to one another is very important in Chinese medicine. And we want to be able to support and balance that entire system. The sixth thing is we want to supplement and balance the immune system. So we call it Wei Qi in Chinese medicine, and this is the defensive qi. This is the energy that the body puts to be able to fight off pathogens. The seventh thing that we're going to use nutritional healing for is to supplement and balance what we call the inner center. And we'll talk about that a little bit more too. The eighth thing we're going to do with nutritional therapy is we're going to counter external influences, even things like the weather or seasonal changes. And the ninth thing is we're going to look at harmonizing the entire system of the horse. So what does this all mean? There are three main points that I want you to be able to take home after today and really be able to utilize for you and your own horses. Number one, we can support our horses' longevity, vitality, and immune system by what we feed them. And today we're going to talk about how and why we do that. The second thing today is we're going to support our horses by feeding them according to the seasons of the year, as each season puts different demands on the body. And we'll talk about how to do that. Number three, we can support the horse by feeding them according to their constitutional needs. This is a very individualized way of feeding and a hallmark of holistic medicine. So today we'll discuss these primary principles and ways to feed accordingly. So let's first talk a little bit about Chinese medicine theory. We're not going to go in depth in this, but it is super important to this topic. And we're going to be basically looking at how the horse's body gets energy from food, where it goes, and how it builds the body's strength. So like we said above, we can support our horses' longevity and their vitality and their immune system by what we feed them. Of course, this makes total sense to us in this day and age. So we're going to discuss how in ancient medicine, they addressed this before modern medicine ever came to be. So it's important to understand that in Chinese medicine, the two organs most associated with digestion are the spleen and the stomach. That's because they're responsible for transformation and transportation of food into energy. In Chinese medicine, we call this the inner center, and it's also the foundation of all health. Whenever a practitioner goes to provide a treatment, the health of this inner center is always addressed, no matter what you're going after. So, like when I go see a horse and I'm working on them, no matter what the complaint is, no matter why I'm being called out to look at that horse, I'm always looking to supplement and support the horse's inner center. Nutrition is one way to address that. There's other ways, but nutrition is one way, and it's a great way for horse owners and people that are daily looking after their horses to be able to address this inner center and this greater vitality. And so that's what we mean when we say that food is medicine. In traditional Chinese medicine, remember that organs have additional and sometimes different functions than we see in Western medicine, so don't let that confuse you today. Try and look at the big picture and pick up as much as you can. So the spleen and stomach are actually paired together in Chinese medicine, and they together are responsible for extracting nutrients from food and drink and transforming them into qi and blood to be transported throughout the body. Then these organs play a role in spreading these vital substances to other organs. In addition, they maintain the balance between fluids, warmth, and energy throughout the body. So the Chinese realized when they addressed the system with acupuncture, herbs, and diet, the vitality of the individual got stronger. Because when digestion is strong, the spleen and the stomach create abundant qi and blood, which is basically the foundation for the entire body's processes. The opposite is true as well. When that system is weak, the entire body suffers. This all applies to horses as well, and that is why dietary therapy is so important for your horse's health. You can directly influence the health of your horse's digestive system by what you feed them, and as we know from current nutritional research, these concepts hold up even though they were formulated thousands of years ago. So it just shows you where things that were developed and practiced in Chinese medicine many years ago actually are being proven today with our modern science, and they support one another in such a beautiful way that is kind of crazy to think about, that some of these principles date back to 3, 4, and more thousand years, and yet they still hold true today. So let's talk a little bit about the concept of energy, because there's a lot of terms that we can throw around in Chinese medicine like qi and blood, and you have to have done a little bit of study to really understand what they mean. So we call it qi. It's really this founding principle of all ancient medicine, that there is an energy that runs through the body, and this energy can be influenced. And in Chinese medicine, there are many layers and functions of qi. A little too much to give you a whole dissertation on qi and what it does, but I want to discuss 2 distinct principles today, and 2 distinct overarching types of energy in the body. And they are called prenatal and postnatal qi. So prenatal qi is basically what your horse is born with. It's like their genetics. It's inherited from the parents at conception, and it's basically the horse's genes and their constitution. This energy is actually stored in the kidneys, and again, a reminder that Chinese medicine organs have a broader range of functions than Western medicine. And in Chinese medicine, the kidneys are the root of vitality, of growth, and longevity. This prenatal qi determines the horse's basic constitution, meaning their stamina, their fertility, their growth, their temperament, and their underlying resilience to injury and disease. It sets the upper limit of health and the upper limit of potential, and while it can be preserved, it really can't be replenished. Think of it like the horse's battery that is like charged up in the womb. Once the horse is born, you can't replace that battery. You can drain it fast through overwork, poor nutrition, and stress, but you can't replace it. And the best way to support it, to preserve it, is through supporting a strong digestive system. Now, postnatal chi, on the other hand, is the energy that is acquired from actually your daily nourishment. So this postnatal chi is formed by the spleen and the stomach and the lungs. This chi fuels daily life like movement, metabolism, staying warm, the horse defending itself against pathogens and injury, and even having a balanced mind and emotions. The postnatal chi continuously replenishes the body, and it can support and protect prenatal chi. In other words, postnatal chi is the everyday energy that your horse makes from good feeds and good dietary management. All right, so here's the important concepts to remember about this prenatal and postnatal chi. So the prenatal chi is the foundation. It's like the roots of the tree. The postnatal chi is the nourishment, like sunlight, water, and soil that actually sustain that tree. When postnatal chi is strong from like balanced digestion and good respiration, it supports the kidneys and helps preserve the prenatal chi. When postnatal chi is weak from poor diet, stress, chronic illness, or overwork, the body starts to borrow from the prenatal reserves, leading to faster aging, fatigue, and constitutional weakness. For horses, that means foals born with a strong prenatal chi grow strong, have a bright demeanor, and recover quickly from any mishaps or injuries. Horses with a strong postnatal chi maintain condition, they have a good, strong immune system, and they have calm energy, even under a demanding environment. But a horse with poor digestion or chronic depletion slowly burns through their inherited reserves, so you'll see a slower recovery, reduced fertility, long-term illness, and weakness. Another important function of digestion in Chinese medicine is the strength of the spleen and the stomach, as it also determines immune strength. Now, I don't want to get too much into the principles of Chinese medicine here because it can be very complex when looking at all the parts and how they influence each other, but we know this to be true in modern medicine as well. And to learn more, it might be helpful to go back and listen to the podcast on the microbiome and also on acupuncture. So basically it works like this. Good digestion means abundant qi in blood, which means strong defenses, which means a very resilient body. So back in the beginning, I said that there was 3 topics that we were going to talk about. And the second one is that I mentioned that you want to feed according to seasons. So now that we have a little bit of understanding about how Chinese medicine works on a very fundamental level, well, now we're going to talk about a little more about Chinese dietary therapy and how we look at the nature of food and the energetics of food and how we use that. And this is where it really differentiates between what we know in modern medicine, or how we look at nutrition in modern medicine, or how we look at functional nutrition as opposed to Chinese nutritional therapy. I'm sure that you've noticed that your horse's energy changes with the seasons, and maybe your horse is extra spirited in the spring, maybe a little sluggish in the late heat of summer, or seems to get stiff and kind of slow as winter settles in. In Chinese medicine, these changes aren't random. They're your horse's natural rhythms, and they actually tell us exactly how to feed them. So you see, in Chinese medicine, each season has its own element, its own energy, and its own effect on the body. And just like we adjust our wardrobe for the weather, we're also going to adjust the horse's diet to support the horse's body as it moves throughout the year. So let's take a look at it a little bit, season by season, so you kind of get an understanding of what I'm talking about here. So the spring season is actually associated with the 5 element of wood. So energy is rising, horses are active, the wind is blowing, horses are playful, and sometimes even a little restless, right? You get sort of that spring fever yourself, and you'll notice that your horse does too. So this is a time of growth and expansion. So we want foods that support that are light, that are slightly cooling, and that help the horse move the qi. The springtime is a time of really a lot of movement of the qi, and we want to support that so that it stays smooth. We want to think about feeding things like fresh greens, fresh wild onions, dandelions, and sprouts, things that actually you would find in nature that the horse would come across in their natural environment if they were free and wild. So you want to supply foods that support a calm yet energized liver system, because the liver and gallbladder is associated with the 5 element of wood, and that is associated with springtime. Okay, let's talk about summer. So summer is actually the fire element season. This is when heat, activity, and excitement peak. So horses may sweat more, or maybe get irritable from the heat, or they can feel easily overheated. So to balance that summer heat, we're going to turn to cool and moistening foods, things like cucumbers or melons or apples, foods that nourish yin, calm the spirit, and keep the horse hydrated and comfortable. Then we have a season in Chinese medicine called late summer. So it's sort of like this extra season between summer and fall, and it's really the time of the earth 5 element. Digestion at this point can slow a little bit. There can be a little accumulation of what we call dampness in Chinese medicine, which is, I think, about puffiness or sluggishness or retention of water. And that can accumulate. So here we want to offer neutral but drying foods. So nothing that's too cooling, nothing that's too warming. So a neutral temperature, a drying food that supports the spleen and stomach. We want to think of things like pumpkin, barley, or fennel, those feeds that keep digestion strong and energy flowing. So that would be really the time to support the spleen and stomach, which is also associated with the earth element, which is also associated with the late summer season. Okay, on to the next season is autumn, and this is the season for the 5 element of metal. In autumn, dryness increases, especially in the respiratory system. Horses can show signs of dry, brittle coat or sensitivity in the lungs. Moistening foods are usually key here, like soaked flax seeds or pears or carrots, and they help nourish yin and basically prevent the body from drying out. And finally, we have the winter season, which is associated with the 5 element of water. In this season, we have the body going into this retracted cold, conservation of energy, and this like quiet energy that dominates. So it's very different. It's the time for the horses to settle and rest before spring erupts again. And so sometimes horses may become a little stiff in the winter or low in energy or show signs of yang deficiency. So don't get too hung up on the terminology, but I want to start introducing them to you. And now you can sometimes have horses get really fresh too because of the cold weather, right? But we're looking at sort of this general idea of the horses are more sort of conserving heat during this time. So this is when warming, yang, nourishing foods are essential, like oats, ginger, and alfalfa. And these help maintain that warmth, that energy, and that vitality even through the cold months, prepping the body for back to spring. So feeding for the seasons isn't just about matching temperature or the forage. It's about flowing with the horse's natural rhythms. So we want to support that. We want to keep the yin and the yang in balance. We want to support the digestion, and we want to prevent any seasonal imbalances before they appear. So part of Chinese medicine is preventative medicine. It is providing warmth when there's cold. It's providing cool when there's hot. It's a way to look at feeding slightly different through the seasons as a preventative way to keep any of these seasonal changes from affecting the horse. So next time you're getting ready to fill up your feed bucket or toss a few carrots in, think about the season. Think about what sort of treat you could be giving during whatever season it is. And especially if you know that your horse struggles during that time of year. Say your horse always struggles in springtime, or there's a lot of horses that struggle going into fall. And so that's when you really can concentrate on supporting them during that time. And you might even want to get specialized help. If you're having a lot of difficulty or your horse has had a serious illness or injury, then it's very nice to have some additional professional help to help you balance the diet for these type things. I tell clients all the time that it is like the addition of all these small changes that usually make the biggest health wins. So I want you to ask yourself, does my horse need a little extra warmth? Does it need a little cooling? Does it need a bit of moisture? Or does it have too much moisture? And then feeding seasonally is one of the simplest and most profound ways to support your horse's health all year long. It's very gentle, but very profound. So let's recap these ideas. So spring, you're going to feed light. You're going to do cleansing green foods. For summer, you're going to feed cooling, moistening foods. For late summer, you're going to concentrate on strengthening the digestive system with mildly sweet foods. For autumn, you're going to look toward moistening the lungs and the skin. And for winter, you're going to use warm and nourishing foods to combat the cold. Okay. So the third thing I said that we were going to talk about today is how we address our horse's constitution via Chinese nutritional therapy. So in Chinese medicine, food isn't only about the season, it's also about how the body feels and functions after eating that food. And that's what we talk about when we mean the energetic function of foods. That means you can use these energetic qualities of food to address imbalances in your horse on an individual level. For instance, every food has a thermal nature. We talked a little bit about this in the seasonal foods, things that are warming or cooling or neutral. Of course, every food has a flavor. Is it sweet? Is it bitter? Is it sour? Is it pungent? Or is it salty? Every food has a meridian or organ affinity. So what system does it support? Does it support the spleen and stomach? Does it support the lungs? Does it support the kidneys? And of course, every food has a direction of movement. So some foods make energy go up, some make it go down, some make it come inward, and some push it outward. By understanding where your horse may need help in these four categories, thermal, flavor, meridian or organ affinity, and direction of movement, you can pick foods to support other therapies that you also might be doing. So let's look at these individually. So the 5 thermal nature of food is hot, warm, neutral, cool, and cold. So, for instance, hot is strongly warming and stimulates yang and disperses cold. It can be used for a cold, sluggish horse or in the wintertime. An example of a feed that is hot in nature is ginger and cinnamon. Dry ginger is more hot than fresh ginger, but they're both very warming. The next nature is warm. So its energetic effects is it gently supports circulation and digestion. So the spleen and the stomach need warmth to digest food. If food is too cold or too raw, it can make it harder to digest. There is almost like you got to think of digestion being like a cauldron in your belly that is cooking the food. It's digesting and cooking the food. If you throw a bunch of cold into that, there's not enough warmth to really digest and cook the food. When we really talk about supporting digestion, we talk about a nice warm soup and how nourishing that is, especially if there's a little bit of cold. And it also is very easy to digest. The same is with horses. When we are looking to support their digestive system, we're looking at things that are in the warm category. Examples of a warm food are oats, alfalfa, and fennel. So neutral then is the third thermal energy of food. It's neither hot nor cold. It's actually very harmonizing without adding any extra hot or cold. So this is for general feeding and daily maintenance. You want to be careful that you're not feeding too much hot or too much cold, and that you're kind of keeping things in that neutral stage. So examples of that would be barley, bran, carrots, and sweet potato. Then we move on to the fourth thermal quality of food, and that's cool. So that clears a mild heat and it relaxes tension. So this can be good for horses that are hot-natured or anxious or have a tendency to run a little high. And good supplements for that in the horse feed, it would be something like carrots, apples, and cucumbers. Then you can have the energetic quality of the food thermally be cold, which means it strongly clears heat, it strongly calms inflammation. Of course, you would use it for feverish states or any acute overheating, or where you really have a lot of heat in the system. You can use cold foods to cool that down. Examples of that would be seaweed and watermelon. Now, there is a couple special notes I want to add here. Because horses have a naturally warm, active body and rely on fermentation, we talk about that a lot in the microbiome podcast, most horses do best on a neutral or slightly warm feed. And so cooling foods are helpful in hot weather or for fiery issues, but overdoing them can actually weaken digestion. So in addition, cold and hot foods should only be used for a short period of time if it's needed to correct an imbalance. We want to stay in that neutral to slightly warming unless we're really going after something. And then if we have to use any foods that are in the cold and the hot category in the thermal nature, we're going to use them for a very short period of time. Okay, we're going to take a break here. And we're going to make this into a 2-part session so that we're not overwhelming you with too much information in any one podcast. So we're going to break here. We're going to come back next time and we're going to go into part 2 and really start talking about the different flavors and pick it up there. See you next time.